Got it. Okay. So we are broadcasting. Thank you, Rabbi Yisrael Wende. I'm Gidon Ariel of Root Source, and I'm happy to be interviewing one of our latest Root Source teacher. He's so uh, late that we haven't even launched him yet. We're going to change that in a short while. But I asked to talk to Rabbi Wende about what he's been doing for many years, but most primarily for the past 4 months or so in the current war that Israel is is engaged with, the war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, maybe also the war against the Hezbollah in the northern front against Lebanon. And so please tell us about yourself, and I'll interrupt you with any questions that I have. We haven't done any of that preparation stuff. That's not the way that I roll. So please tell us a little bit about yourself, Rabbi Wende.
So first, Shalom Gidon, and I'm very happy also to be here on the Zoom and also to be part of the root source. Although I'm still new and still getting my classes prepared. So I guess I'll start a bit about myself. I'm about almost 40 years old. I learned in the Beit El Yeshiva in Beit El, married, have 5 kids, and we live now in Ma'ale Edomim, where I also serve as the rabbi of a community, a very nice community in Ma'ale Edomim. And on a regular day, I'll be teaching in school without the war being around us.
Where were you born?
I was born, I really have a mixture. I was born in Australia. As I say, I was born in a big hospital. I was born in Australia, in Melbourne. I made Aliyah when I was 3 months old.
Oh,
So I really used to cry every night after making Aliyah, but I was a baby. I'm mainly Israeli. Um, in 2019, we went to Shlichut, the mission. We were in Memphis, Tennessee, and
wait
that's
a
where
second.
I
I'm
increased.
still gonna wait to hear a little bit earlier than that. Your parents obviously your parents made Aliyah. Were you the only child? Were you the
So
youngest?
I'm the oldest child. I was the only child then. Now we have 4 brothers, Baruch Hashem. 4 boys. Boys tend to be boys when you have only boys. My name Israel, is because my parents knew they wanted to make Aliyah,
Wow.
and they gave me beforehand already the name Israel as the state of Israel. So
I'm
that's how I
guessing
got
that
my
your
name.
parents are about. I'm guessing your parents are about my age. If you're about 40 and they're probably about 20
Probably,
when you're born. So they themselves were born in Australia.
yeah, they were born
So
in Australia.
and did
The
they
grandparents
come to?
already,
Pardon me?
the grandparents or my grandparents were all born in Australia or came to Australia when they were very young. But the great grandparents already they immigrated from or Europe or Israel. Actually, I have sources in Israel too. So from Europe, Israel, Australia, and now back in Israel.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. What the where in Australia were your parents living?
My mother came from Melbourne. My father came from Perth. I think someone told me once, I never checked it, that they are the most distant cities in the world. With, as they say in Australia, there's the middle of Bupo in between. There's nothing in between. If you go from the desert, you go next to the coast. A few days of driving. They really came from two parts of Australia. And they have an interesting story of how they met in a Torah class. And my mother said she saw my father and she knew he's going to be my husband at the
Very
first
nice.
meeting.
It sounds familiar. Yeah, you have stories like that. Where did you guys live when you made Aliyah?
So we really lived in many places. We moved around Israel, a bit in Jerusalem, a bit in a small settlement called Nachliel. We were only 8 families there. And then Yad Binyamin, Migdal HaEmek, Rehovot, we saw different places.
Your parents were educators, I'm guessing.
No, my mother's a doctor, my father works in high tech. I even think you have some sort of a work connection between you, if I'm not mistaken. NDF sounds familiar.
Sure, of course.
So I think you used to work together. It's a
Ah,
small Jewish
how do
world.
you like that? Small world.
Yeah.
Okay, so you grew up, you were going all the way around. You finally finished high school and you said, I'm going to go to Yeshivat Beit El, not far from Jerusalem. And you loved it there.
True. Very nice yeshiva, good learning. And if you go up to the views, you go up to the mountain where afterwards we lived there for a few years, you can really see all of the coast and all of the Hermon,
Wow.
having the views of where Jacob had his dream, together with the learning the Torah that comes from Yaakov. It's really something which connects things together.
So when you got married, you lived in Beit El to begin with,
Yeah, we lived there for about 4 years. Yeah.
and then you went on shlichut. You served as an emissary. You went abroad to serve in a educational position.
Beforehand, we went to Kadima to be like a mission in Kadima, part of a community that established a shul, that invited everyone to daven there. The shul, Baruch Hashem, grew now and it's much bigger than when we left. We
Just
were
one
there for
second.
7 years.
Kadima, is that a city? How big? That's not far from Netanya, right?
Right. Yeah, Kadima is Kadima Tzoran. Well, it's a small town, you can call. Small, yeah, town.
Okay. Is it bigger than
Nice
Male
place.
Adumim?
Smaller than Ma'ale Domim.
Smaller than
They have
Male.
a smaller there. They have great strawberries. The best strawberries I've tasted everywhere else in the States. The best strawberries are there.
Okay, I'll keep that in
Kadima.
mind. I like strawberries.
Yeah.
Okay, so you
We
were
were
like the
there.
rabbi in Soran for a while.
And that's when also I joined the IDF. I became a rabbi in the IDF. I was there for 6 years in the army.
Oh, full time?
Full time, yeah. That was my full-time job, rabbi in the IDF.
When you
Very,
when
very
you joined
interesting.
when you joined the army at first, was that into the rabbinate, or first you were in a different position, then you switched to the rabbinate?
So years ago, almost 20 years ago, I was a regular, normal combat soldier in Gifati, the Purple Berets. And usually a rabbi in the army, he'll do his regular army service, get released, go back to yeshiva, get smicha sometimes, like I got smicha in Beit El,
Ordination.
and then afterwards you go back to the army.
And so that's what you did.
Yeah, I did it.
Okay, so that's what I'm quite interested. Tell me about being a rabbi in the army. Tell you a little bit about, let's start with that first stint 20 years ago or whatever it was.
So really, it depends and it changes from place to place and obviously from time to time. Being a rabbi as in a times of war is very different than being a rabbi in regular times. And the missions you have, some would, depending where you are different missions. I used to say always to soldiers who were under me that being a rabbi or being in the rabbinate, it's 50-50. 50% is missions that I give you, my soldiers, or that missions that I get as a rabbi. You need to check the kashrut of the food, and you need to make sure that the mezuzot are up and the eruv for Shabbat, everything for Shabbat is organized. So the regular things that you need to make sure everyone has, the soldiers get whatever they need to get. And then there's 50% that really you decide what to put in and how you decide to add more things. And it's from place to place, it's how do you cater to the people in the way that they need it. So I was for 2 years in the training base of Golani, Bach Golani. It's an amazing experience because you see every 4 months the base gets 400 soldiers, 500 soldiers more or less, from different places, like Ashkenazi, Sephardi, from the city, from small towns, really, really different soldiers.
And these are people that just finished high school, basically, for the most
They
part.
just finished high school. The one common thing about them is that they wanted Golani because
Oh, they all wanted these are
they
you
all
have to
wanted
be.
Golani because so many people want Golani. If you don't want Golani, they'll ask someone else to come because so many
Wow.
people want Golani. Golani is it's an atmosphere which is almost, I think, impossible to describe in words. It's saying he was a srita, but srita bona. It's something which turns around something in your mind, but you're part of a family. And when you see a mission, I think the main thing of Golani is when they see a mission, they go for the mission. They try to go for the mission. We will
Wow.
laugh with soldiers, sometimes without thinking, they'll go good, they'll do the mission they can do in the best way they can, really in the best way they can. And that's one of the really unique things about Golani. And there it's really being part of the commanders, part of the team of the staff of the base, and giving motivation to soldiers because they just finished high school, and training isn't so easy. Some of them come from very hard families. Some of them after a month or two say, "Why are we here? Why we have friends who aren't going to combat, and they go home every day or every week, and we're here." And they have the marches they need to do and the training they need to do, and all of the fun stuff and is in the 50% which isn't given to you. Like you decide to do it. So I used to go on the marches with them and walk 30 kilometers, sometimes pulling the soldiers with me. Like
Wow.
after a year, came to me a soldier and told me, "I remember you going up to the Hermon mountain. You pulled me up to the mountain." That's
Wow. Wow.
um, even connecting really the our heritage, our beauty and values we have from the Jewish nation, bringing it to them in a way where everyone can relate to it. And that was also a very important thing in Golani. And also since because there's so many soldiers there, so always you need to make sure that the regular things they get, the tzitziyot, for example, the hundreds of tzitziyot a year, really Shirei Torah classes, on Shabbatot when I was there every few Shabbatot. Me and my kids and my family and my wife spent quite a few Shabbatot in the base. So it's really, when you're there, you're working around the clock.
Now, of course, these 400 or 500 recruits to Golani, they're not all what we would call religious.
Right.
But you are the rabbi of all of them.
Yeah. Not only I was a rabbi of all of them, I was in charge also on the Muslims, Christians, and also Druze soldiers. And maybe I'll start from the Druze soldiers, and then we'll go to the Jewish soldiers. For a few months, for almost a year, we had a battalion of Druze soldiers doing the training with us. And then they decided to close the battalion and to let the Druze join all the other units of Tzahal. And before they came, I decided that I'll learn about the Druze soldiers and now know more about them than the soldiers themselves. So there's a few things they don't eat. I made sure the kitchen doesn't have them, so the Druze soldier can feel comfortable and eat. And I was telling one of the soldiers, one of the commanders actually, I made sure that the kitchen doesn't have such and such. He looks at me and said, "What? We don't eat it?" And he goes to his friend and asks him, "We don't eat it?" And he says to him, "Right, we don't eat that the kind of vegetable." And so I felt that I got to my mission of knowing about the Druze more than they knew themselves. So that was really when you go to the Jewish population, first, a lot of Golani are what you call Masorti. Maybe the
Traditional.
translation will be tradition. Not the same, but many of them are connected. And even if they don't keep Torah mitzvah, they do want to uh, to be connected. And second, even when you talk to the non-religious people, you always try to find what everyone can connect to and what everyone can relate to. The values, for example, of ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, loving the other like yourself. Everyone can connect to it. So you always try to find, and that's one of the things we need to think of. How do we unite people and not try to separate people? That was one of the important things we did. And besides that, also you do special classes for people who want to. If they want to come and learn Torah, they can come in the free time. So the soldier has a choice. When I came without asking the soldiers, I had to make sure that always I speak to the crowd, to everyone. in a to make sure everyone will feel comfortable when I'm there. And I think I was very happy
So
to
you
see
would
it
say,
happening.
how many of these 4 month, you say that you were there for like 2 years, so that's about six groups of about,
Yeah.
and there was very little, if at all, antagonism against the Jewish religion.
In Golani, no, we didn't see it. And also, you work in a clever way. Like you when you come in the intention of connecting and showing what really is combine us together, connects us, creates a bond between us. But there's no reason to fight about it.
Beautiful. I'm very happy to hear that. Wow, Izzy. Okay, so you
Yeah.
were there
Then
for
from
about
Golani, I
two
moved to a
years.
different
Pardon me?
unit. From Golani, I moved to a different unit, which is totally different, and that was a bit more challenging. Shahid 13, which is the Israeli Navy SEALs, if you want to.
Wow.
A totally different atmosphere, different vibe, different type of soldiers. Many of the soldiers were more secular. And also there, you learn in the end how to connect to the soldiers, see what really what creates a bond. That's what you do. And even there, you have soldiers who are more in technicians, and they want more help of the rabbi with motivation and talks and around the holidays. And you have the combat soldiers who will also be more busy. They'll also be they have the values already. They know what they want. So you have the different kinds of soldiers. But they also, Baruch Hashem, I'm very very thankful that I was there for 4 years. Things went very smooth.
Were you with this more or less the same soldiers for those whole 4 years, or you always brought new people in? How many people are in the Shayat Shloshesrei, this unit?
There's quite a few soldiers. It's quite a big base. Um, but for every soldier for every combat soldier there's at least five more, but at least five non-combat soldiers. Because you need someone to take care of the guns and the ships and all the other things, the boats. And so since it's not a small base. And in 4 years, you managed to connect to them.
So
Uh,
that's a Navy base. So where
yeah,
was it?
that's the Navy base.
Haifa?
In athletes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Near Haifa. Between Tel
Yeah, I
Aviv
think
and
that
Haifa.
it's the most beautiful base I think I've seen in Israel. It's the
Wow.
beach and we were there for Leila Seder, and my wife always loves to say Hallel, the prayer of Hallel in the morning on the beach. The view of the beach, the calmness of the beach. A few maybe two funny things from that. There was there's a Crusade fortress on the base, in the edge on the north side of the base. There's a Crusade fortress. Now it's a bit hard to go into it. They're doing renovations there and searching there. But when I was there, it was easier to go there. So I knew the fortress quite a bit. I researched about it and I spoke to the archaeologist about it. And since I was an English speaker, whenever they had someone from the States, from the Navy, who came to visit in the base and they wanted them to, so the rabbi pays to study for quite a few Navy people, for the admiral of the Navy.
Please,
That was
please, okay,
quite
Rabbi, please tell us about the Crusader Palace
the
over here.
Crusades. Yeah. So again, it's the same idea of trying to cater and find what each one can relate to. That was that. And then we think which is it wasn't the rabbi typically job, but when I was there, that was one of my jobs. I was in charge of Shekem, which is like the small shop of the soldiers. And then I had two options. One is to say, well, I don't like it, but I'll still get it. I want to say, I'm a rabbi, I'm not supposed to do it, but I'll use that as part of how do we connect, how do we bring values. I used to write every week an email, usually with a bit of humor, sense of humor in it, tell about what's happening in the shop. And I used to try every week to bring a different value by this shop. Be a value of which connects to the base, a value of love of the land. Sometimes I would ask the commanders, what values do you want me to bring? I'm only your microphone. You decide. I'll be your microphone to share the values you want to bring out, and that was one of maybe the highlights, I'll say.
Well, I don't think it's so bad to be a rabbi who runs the Shechem. I mean, the Chafetz Chaim, everybody knows he ran a grocery store also. So you got a good experience behind you on that.
Yeah.
When I was in the army also, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I was in the tank corps, and for a half a year, I think I was in a unit of an experimental unit that did the experiments of the tanks. We were a very small unit. We were like about a half a dozen people. So I was also in charge of the shekel just for us. I would buy stuff, and people would take the sodas or the candy bars or something like that.
You know,
Army's a lot
you
of fun.
also know the headache of having the check in 1 minute. Yeah.
So that was 6 years of the is IDF rabbinate that you were in these two units, and you were what are your 3 bars? What is that called in English?
Seren in English, I think it's a captain. I'm not sure. I don't know. We can check it out.
So you were a captain in those times?
Yeah, I started with 2 bars and then I moved to
the 3 bar.
the 3.
Here.
But
Show
as I
the
tell my
people
kids,
what you got over there. I
only
know we both know what you're talking about. Show us what's on your shoulders a second. There you go. Okay.
as I tell my kids, it's only a bit of ink. That's the only thing. If the main thing is what you are, your personality is, I can change it to something else, and it's just ink, and that's it. Or piece
We
of
have
metal.
in my community, we have I think 3 rabbi officers or whatever, like yourself. 2 of them are captains like you, and one, I think he's one falafel, like
Falafel. Okay.
one rank above.
Yeah.
The higher ranking officer, he's in reserves. He's the rabbi of our community, and I think that he's the rabbi of a chativa. I don't even know what that's called in English. He's more than a battalion, whatever it is.
Brigade.
A brigade. That sounds
Sure.
right.
Brigade, I
That
think.
sounds right. Yeah,
Brigade.
you should know that
The
stuff.
brigade, yeah.
So, and my son is in that unit. So my son is not a rabbi. He's not an officer, but he's amongst that. I'm not sure exactly what it is. The other 2, one of them, I'm not even sure. He recently moved here, but since the war came in, I see him often wearing the uniform. Sometimes not, sometimes yes. I'm not sure exactly. I didn't get a chance to talk to him yet. But the other one is Rabbi Duty Greenfeld. I don't know. You might have even heard of him. I believe that he is the Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshiva of Tzahal.
Of the Greenfield. Okay, in the old city.
Exactly.
Right, in the old city. Yeah.
So I don't know if he's the head of the yeshiva or just the head of the kollel, or he is one of the rabbis that actually writes the answers to the responses to the questions that the chief rabbinate gets, as far as I understand.
Right. And that's a very important place, because especially when you get to a war, and you get very, very interesting questions in a war. And there's also not in a war, but can people come back on Shabbat, not come back on Shabbat? Or a lot of questions about Shabbat, driving on Shabbat, different questions on kashrut, using different instruments.
Yes,
that's a very important place of the rabbinate.
And a big deal, a big part of the rabbinate during the war, tragically, of course, is if there are what is it called? Soldiers who fall. There's a special word for it.
Halalim.
Halalim in Hebrew. I'm trying to remember what the English word is.
Collecting and identifying soldiers who fell, and they had a lot of work, unfortunately, the first few days, first few weeks of the war.
When the war started on October 7th, of course, over 1,000 people were killed. and amongst them hundreds of soldiers.
Right.
And so so it was all hands on deck to deal with these with the fallen soldiers.
Yeah.
Very tragic.
Uh,
So
yes,
did you do any of
that
that?
no, I was in my base was like a bit in the behind, not in the front lines. That's how we're able not to office and speak. But for different reasons, they decided there was a debate to bring us, not to bring us. They decided to leave us in base. I spoke to quite a few friends about it, and it's really like a avodat kodesh. So they worked around the clock,
Only
trying to
work.
identify the soldiers, civilians, the terrorists who got dressed up as soldiers to make sure there's no mistake, and we didn't have any civilian who was killed and by mistake is thought to be a terrorist. So they really had to check thousands of bodies.
So you heard of this? You personally did not participate in any of that.
Right. Yeah. Our base is more in the back lines. So in the war, so that the mission of the rabbi changes. It's two main things. One is things he prefers not to deal with, and that's soldiers who are killed, and he needs to deal with them. Baruch Hashem in our base. Baruch Hashem, we were fine.
Can you share what you
And
are you back in the Shayetet? Are you back in the
no, I'm in a different place. Different place.
okay.
So not in the Shayetet. Shayetet had a few people killed in the beginning of the war, October 7th. Um, yeah, one of them was a great heart, Ellie, big heart, and then shocking to see that he was killed on the first day. So one of the things is to deal with the people who were killed, and that's you need to be focused on the mission. Once I had to do a certain, you have to be focused on the mission and do it in the best way. And the rest is in a war. They say in Hebrew, the Mamlechet Vadaot, it's the kingdom of unknown. And obviously the soldiers in the front, they feel it the most, but in the end, everyone feels it. And as a rabbi, if you have to change things now and help with different halachic questions, and especially around Shabbat and bringing equipment. And then also amazing thing we saw in the war, few amazing things. First, so many soldiers came, although they were cold, not cold. Yeah, in a few hours, Tal got to the maximum amount of soldiers it can handle, and all the bases became much, much bigger. And also many soldiers felt that something happened and something is calling them, and they wanted seek for meaning. What does it mean for us? How do we manage to handle it? Many soldiers were looking for tzitziot, and I think we gave out tzal, tzitziot, like with the strings. Yeah.
Yeah.
This tzal gave out tens of thousands of tzitziot. The rabbinate in our base also we gave out many tzitziot. Giving
I think the people were volunteering all over the world to tie those TCO
to
to
tie
get
them,
them to
yeah,
prepare them. It's unbelievable.
yeah. There was such a big demand that even my kids who aren't bar mitzvah or just around bar mitzvah, they were helping in tying the other really. Just before we started the conversation now, a soldier asked me if we can have tziyot. I said, "I'm sure, I'll go to the office and give you." And we had only one left. So that's it. Now we need to try and find more.
Wow.
It just there's such a big demand for it. And mezuzot, one of the things that I do a lot around the base. I think I've checked more than 100 mezuzot of the war. And people think we want a connection. We want to be part. We want to make sure it was a war on the Jewish identity, not just on the Jewish faith, also on the Jewish identity. Maybe people all around the world can feel anti-Semitism rising up. And it brought, since it's a war on the Jewish identity, so it brought people to ask, so what is my identity? How do I connect to this identity? How do I connect to my nation? And also we saw sort of in the base of people coming to more classes, coming and asking for lean, for example, we got a few donations of tefillin and we gave them out. So that was also a nice thing. And another thing which maybe I achieved in the war, I think we even spoke about it on the phone once. I'll show you a second here. Last 3 years I've been working on a book, a book about marriage, and from the book of Bereshit, where that's my series on root source. And really for many years I've been working on it. I think for about 5 years, and then the last 2 years writing it down and bringing it. At the beginning of the war, I decided I'm going to print it out. So I printed it out. That's the book. And
nice.
I got a few donations from people to give it out to soldiers, and I gave it to soldiers and married soldiers.
Yes.
And also that you could see how it was it is still a big strain, not just on the soldiers, also on the families, because soldiers left the wives behind, the families behind, the kids behind. Soldiers in the front lines, obviously, there's always a question, what's happening? Whenever you hear a plane or helicopter, what does that mean? And even soldiers who were in the back lines, so you spend quite a few nights out of the house, and you have to have strong families in the back. So that was my small dedication, and people who helped me and dedicated money in printing the book and giving it to the families as a way of strengthening the love between the couple.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. Thank you very, very much for that. Oh, I hope that we will be able to promote that more in Root Source also, and help you on that Avodat Kodesh, that holy work that you're doing there. So now you're full time in the army?
No, now in the beginning I was full time in the army. Then slowly I'm going back to teaching, because also the students need us, and part of keeping a normal life is the routine of school, and probably very soon I'll be back to school in full time.
In school, you're teaching in Ma'ale Adumim?
In Modi'in.
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 Very nice. Tov, well, that was very interesting, telling us a little bit about your personal, and that's like an open window to general how the Israeli rabbinate in the army, I keep on forgetting that word. How do you say that in English? Chaplaincy.
Chaplain, yeah.
That's right.
Everybody, the captain, and probably the chaplain.
And it's wonderful. You've got a very shining countenance. You're a big smile, and as you've described so much, that's the most important part of being a rabbi in the army, and frankly anywhere, is to be smiling, give people a good feeling about their Jewish heritage.
Thank you very much, Gideon, for this speech, this talk together. And if I can add one call for people, Jews and non-Jews around the world, it's one of the amazing really things we see in the army. As soon as you get dressed in the uniform, no one knows if you are religious, not really. I mean, they can see the kippah, they can see the beard. No one really cares. We are all one. We are all in one boat. We're all united, and we can just call our brothers and sisters, wear the uniform. Even if you aren't in the army, this idea of being united, we're all in one mission. We disagree about things, but we still feel united. That's a really amazing thing still here in the army and in the IDF. And another thing which it's when I come home sometimes, now I got used to it. But in the beginning, it was moving from one world to another world, and it was just a few hours drive, but it's really transforming the energy in the army, and the goal mission, and hearing the planes around you, and hearing the artillery around you, and seeing the houses that were destroyed. You understand what you're doing, you understand the story. And sometimes the people far away, in Israel or out of Israel, it's very hard to understand the story. It's very hard to connect to the story from a Zoom, from WhatsApp, from videos. And if people can try to connect, understand the big story, understand what's really happening here, that will bring us, I think, a bit more light and energy to continue.
Well, thank you very, very much, Rabbi Wende. I think that our viewers at Root Source will be very, very excited to hear your insider story. And we mentioned at the beginning that you're a graduate of Yeshivat Beit El. I'm not a graduate of Beit El, but I do subscribe to their English language newsletter, and I'm going to share this. I'm going to offer this video to them if they would like to share it with their newsletter as well.
Thank you very much. All too.
Okay, toda rabba. Thank you very, very much. Have a great night. Say, תשמור לעצמך.
Amen. And for everyone,
Amen.
all the
Shalom,
soldiers
shalom.
and everyone.
Bye.